What if I grew it out just to see?
In the ever-changing and honestly frightening world of today's political climate, it's easy to lose grip of reality, with vile hatred being drummed up by reactionary forces, many of which sit in offices or hold the majority of parliamentary governments all over the world, scapegoating immigrants, ethnic minorities, and in the case of this video, specifically, transgender individuals. It can be said that one of the reasons for such hatred is a lack of understanding, or in other words, it's hard to vilify the other if you empathize with the other and you're able to grasp what their struggle actually is. As such, that's what we'll be discussing today. The lives, struggles, and difficulties of transgender individuals, and hopefully, through watching of this video, I can help the audience understand and kind of grasp these empathies. And if you already hold such empathies, I hope that you will walk away with more knowledge than you came in with. Though this may seem kind of foreign and a little bit weird to a lot of people, I will say after learning more about the trans experience, it's quite a relatable one and, in my own opinion, quite easy to put yourself in their shoes. My name is Ethan Clark, and today we'll be discussing the trans struggle. The transgender struggle is such a large and expansive topic. If we were to cover every aspect from legislation to internal feelings and psychology of transgender individuals, we would be here all day. This video would be hours long and would probably become an entire series. As such, we'll only be talking about pressing aspects and aspects that I found particularly interesting. It is also worth mentioning that this video will be heavily relying on the experiences and literature from transgender women. The reason is primarily because I have found myself gravitating towards their experiences more. I'm not really sure the reason why, but how did this get in there? Okay. Anyways, there are countless experiences. Much of this information will be, of course, relatable to all trans individuals. However, some of the information will be trans femme exclusive due to the research area I've typically focused on. So keep that in mind going forward. Many people who have never interacted with a transgender individual, and even those who have a difficult way wrapping their heads around trans existence and the intricacies of it. As Julia Serrano, in her book, Whipping Girl, explains, there is an automatic assumption in society that cis people tend to have that anyone they interact with is also cis as well. This assumption of gendering others doesn't really follow the way that right-wing framing kind of props it up to be, where people gender others based on biological chromosomal makeup, or based on their gender assigned at birth, or by genitals, or by socialization, but instead a series of secondary sex categorizations that the mind does subconsciously when you talk to a person. Things like how long someone's hair is, what their voice is like, what their build is. And this is all subjective based on what the individual perceives as what men and women should look like. A mental schema, if you will. It functions very similarly in the way that heteronormativity assumes that every individual is straight until proven otherwise. Cisnormativity dictates that others are cissexual until proven otherwise, or until a suspicion is raised that that is not the case. Cisnormativity and heteronormativity are not completely subjective. These are sociological constructs. They are defined and made by the countries we live in, the communities and cultures of what men and women look like. When we're talking specifically about cisnormativity, it is not constantly an issue, this assuming of others' cisness. For example, when transsexuals are assumed via their secondary sex categorization in a specific society or by a set group of people to be their desired sex and identity. However, on the other hand, when they are assumed to be their assigned sex at birth, or the individual cannot tell and acts in confusion, it takes the form of either remaining silent and thus staying in the closet, or coming out to every single individual who gets it wrong or questions their sex. In the words of a queer friend who has spent a lot of time in trans dating spaces and has recently dated a trans woman,
It fucking sucks. They just give you a weird look. When I would go to the liquor store with my ex-girlfriend, we wouldn't get clocked as lesbian, and they'd always stare at her, trying to figure out what to make of her. When they saw her ID, they'd either, with the knowledge that she's trans, drop their confusion and respect that, or begin to treat her as male.
They continue on.
You get all the shitty misogyny that comes with being a woman and all of the oppression that comes with being trans. Never being fully accepted into women's spaces. Like being stuck in a liminal space.
There's an obsession in typical cis-normative society surrounding non-passing and androgynous transsexuals. We kind of see this in that example given by a friend, but we also see it explained by Serrano, where essentially there is an obsession with knowing and knowledge of a person's gender, of a person's sexual identity, of a person's sex. And this gets thrown into the mix if someone does not check off enough boxes in one's own subjective view of secondary sex categories and what makes up men and women. This is present not just in transphobic individuals, but even individuals that are trans accepting. They demand to know through their palpable confusion and sometimes straight up uncomfortable questioning, trying to find the root of the transness. Simply saying, I'm a man or I'm a woman is not enough if these boxes are not checked off. The confusion remains. And we can kind of see this as cis people trying to find a root, transness, as the root cause of this confusion. And if they discover that this person they're looking at, this person that does not make sense in their subjective view of secondary sex categorization, that it allows them to not think about how they perceive men and women. They can just go, oh, well, of course, this person is trans, and go on with their day. Again, as in the example in the past, as the friend said, treating them as respectfully, now knowing that they're trans, and treating them as the sex that they wish to be treated as, or through hatred, and treating them as their assigned sex at birth against their wishes. In cis-normative society, in this way, for trans people, transness follows them everywhere, at all times. It is kind of always on their mind, and they're always at risk from this phenomenon of cis-normative society, of being outed. The obsession with knowing is also present, or so I've read, in various female spaces, especially lesbian ones, where transsexual women are included. Their transness is often rooted out and kept at an arm's length from truly being a physical member, only a member in spirit, kind of like false allyship. This compounds with reactionary men in their attempt to protect women's spaces, quote unquote, where even the title of lesbian on a transsexual woman directs hate, to fall once again onto Serrano. This is less of a desire to protect the lesbian from the fabled trans predator, but more out of jealousy and envy of being rejected. The hatred is doubled by the trans lesbian's lack of desire to be intimate with men. This very much mirrors the misogynistic and homophobic ways that men criticize and hate and act towards cissexual lesbians. It is a hatred which comes from being unable to dominate a woman.
Why would lesbians make you uncomfortable, though?
I don't know. It just bothers me for some reason. Makes me feel like icky, or like, I don't know. I just feel weird about myself. I don't think it's gross. I don't know.
So what specifically makes you feel weird then?
Maybe it's like that whole thing that like some guys have, the like weird misogyny thing where it's like they get kind of mad or frustrated at like women they can't have. You gotta like unlearn that, you know. And like maybe I just gotta do that.
But you're a gay man.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they're just stupid. Maybe just do. I guess I just don't get it. I don't know.
Hey, you good?
Yeah. Sorry. God. Yeah, no, I guess I just don't get it. Right? I mean, it makes sense. Lesbians, gay men, they see each other as like icky or whatever. It's probably like just a normal thing. Like like gay men don't want to be lesbians, right? It's, yeah. Being outed does not just affect trans people. Funny enough, it also affects cis people. In cis-normative society, cis-normativity doesn't only affect transsexuals, but cis people as well who don't necessarily fit all of these boxes of a person's own subjective view of what men and women should look like based off secondary sex categories. There are countless and numerous cases of cis men, and especially cis women, being met with this line of questioning or with violence occasionally, assuming that this cis-sexual person is transsexual. We've seen women being kicked out of women's restrooms, cis women being kicked out of women's restrooms because they have short hair, or they're a butch lesbian, or something along these lines, where we can see that this culture of outing and this questioning and this assumption of what men and women look like based on these subjective factors in cis-normative society not only deeply affects trans people, although it mostly does, but also has an effect on hurting cis people as well. This transitions really well into the topic of dysphoria and the closet, which will be the next topic of discussion. As all these situations are either dysphoria-inducing or force transsexuals to come out of the closet to those around them. The closet, as Sedgwick describes, is somewhat of a tool that is utilized for protection of the queer individual. Sedgwick mainly describes it through homosexuality, but this analysis applies to transness as well, to hide one's transness from the world to protect oneself. However, I would argue that with the case of transness, that the closet is not just something that hides being trans from the outside world, i.e. things like transition in secret, pretending to be a girl online, or in Serrano's case, of spending time presenting as trans only in the kind of semi-anonymous world of downtown nightlife, but also is a space where your own mind hides being transsexual from yourself. In the words of a trans woman I know, I spent months lurking in trans spaces
online, wishing I could be one of them, but my mind would never allow myself to think I could be like them, that I wasn't enough, that I wasn't lucky enough to be like them. I wouldn't let myself admit that I was trans.
I find this not only pressing to the point of what the closet entails for trans people, but also find that in the specific example, it's quite relatable, I guess. Can we cut that? Dysphoria, in many ways, is present both in and out of the closet. In various people I've spoken to, and in much of the literature I've read, the way that it presents is both socially and in a physical kind of material sense towards one's own flesh. Some people first notice a dull feeling of being called their assigned sex at birth. Others grow a hatred and disgust at their secondary sex categoristics, like filling out or gaining or losing muscle, the presence or lack thereof of breasts, even hair being long and feminine, or on the other end, short and even falling out of your head and losing it completely, which can cause a insane amount of distress for a person who is either in or out of the closet as a transsexual individual. I really wish I wasn't balding,
Yeah, I mean, it sucks, yeah.
Like, God, it, gets so bad, I sometimes, want to die over it. Do you ever get like that? Like, the impending doom from going bald? How it makes you want to die?
Yeah, I mean, I like my hair, but, if I start balding, I'm just gonna be, a bald guy,
Yeah, I guess I'm just, kind of different. I don't know. Sometimes I envy women a little bit because, they hardly ever go bald. It's mostly because of testosterone. I don't know if you knew that. So, I don't know. It's hard for us guys automatically to, stay pretty and, I mean, they're cute,
No, I don't really get that way, man.
Oh.
Testosterone causes balding? Did you, look into this?
Yeah, I did. It's, testosterone turns into DHT, which causes baldness. If I wasn't cis, I would totally start estrogen. Nearly everything is gendered. Everything. While cissexual people hardly have to think about it, for the transsexual individual, it is constantly in frame. How every single action, every article of clothing, voice and structure, and etc., it is just all deeply gendered. For a transsexual person who is out, it is a constant thing to think about. And the same can be said for the closeted transsexual. However, instead of it being omnipresent and a thing that can even be properly navigated, it is something without knowing slowly eats away at the mind until it comes smashing down on itself. Many resort to substances and alcohol to numb the feeling of the impending doom at one's own flesh. Sorry, I don't really remember where I was in this. This has been really hard to put together. Making this has taken a long, long time, and I don't know where the end is, and I don't know where it begins. There's so many parts in the script that kind of blend together and merge into something. God knows I can't remember half of it because I was drunk for so long. I think I know where we are, so let's continue here. There is a sort of feeling that is often presented outwards to the world to make onlookers understand. From art and depictions of transsexuals made by transsexuals, or in the deep discussion and talks by transsexuals, the feeling of anguish and dread and misery. Now, as we've noted throughout the course, this tying of queer identity to painful existence is, in the long run, extremely harmful, such as leaving open room to perpetuate transgender suicide rates, tying it so close to the misery of pain and death. However, there is something to be said about how this misery is often presented. We've seen it in many artistic depictions, from things like I Saw the TV Glow to other depictions of how vile the closet is. There is a feeling that is often used to convey the disparity, the severity of dysphoria and the plight of trans healthcare to the audience, which is often the point of these depictions. It is the other end of this misery, which it has a point, which again is to kind of give this plight the necessity of healthcare, of therapy, of doctors that transsexual people often require. It is most commonly done in transsexual made depictions to represent the closet, a feeling used to convey the severity of dysphoria, the closet, while functioning similarly to how it was explained previously. It is less of a closet and more of a husk that they hide in. The feeling of life passing before your eyes, the feeling of rotting away, the day-by-day masculinization of my body, which comes with age. Soon you won't be a cute, even androgynous boy anymore. No, you'll be a man, and you'll watch your body fill out, and you'll watch your body warp and gain weight in areas that make you look like your dad, and your long hair is falling from your head because you're fucking rotting. You're rotting in your own flesh, and you're dying because you're fucking dying. And do something! Wake up, you coward! You're fucking dying! Hello! Hi, how's it going? That was pretty intense, huh? Yep, quite intense little project there. My name is Evelyn Clark. If depending on where you're seeing this, this is in class, you know me as one of the, I believe, 2 transsexual women who are in the gender studies class we're in, Queering Foundations. And if you're a random person on the internet, then you know me from the YouTube channel. Riley, help me out with this. The Bunker, yes, this video will be posted both for school and as a personal project to the Bunker as well. Now, why did I make this? And kind of what was the whole idea? Well, I figured an epilogue would kind of make sense because it did end very abruptly. And I wanted to kind of explain this to the professors, as well as people watching, the reason for its quick escalation and abrupt end. This piece was supposed to represent dysphoria and coming to terms with transness. And I kept very vague when I presented this project to you, Emmett, the person who will be grading this, specifically because I didn't want to give too much of what I was going to make, which I kind of lied. It was less about, an actual video essay that was real, and more of a descent into insanity piece about what dysphoria in the closet kind of does to a person. And the whole idea is I'm basically playing myself from a year ago. Can't believe I'm putting my dead name on the internet. But I'm playing myself from a year ago who's attempting to do a video essay about trans issues and about my descent into insanity that came from being so stuck in the closet. I would have liked this to be longer. However, of course, this piece was made in the span of a week or 2, so we only had time to do as much as we did here, which is unfortunate. And I may go back and have this to be a smaller part of a larger project, but this would be an independent piece on my own time, which if you're on the YouTube channel, you'll see. Oh, you'll see. But yeah, so I hope this kind of served to achieve what I set it to do, which is more of an artistic piece rather than, again, an informational piece. This is we ended up having this discussion as I was writing the script pretty early on. I felt the script was getting way too big and we didn't have enough time to film it all. And I was like, well, the main point of this was to do the artistic expression of the descent into insanity, that dysphoria and being in the closet as a transsexual woman, what that causes, the fantasies, the weird things that don't make sense that happen. But it was so heavily tilted on trying to also do a real video essay at the same time that it didn't really mesh well. So we ended up talking, me and some of my friends who do film, and we're like, well, if the main point of this creative project is to be a creative project and to show off the artistic end and to have a piece about dysphoria, how about lean it more heavily on the artistic aspect rather than the actual forward, basically giving an essay vocally aspect. So we shifted to instead of doing the vocal essay where it's just I write an essay and I read it to the camera, to do a little bit of that, which I still think has some pretty good information inside of it that's very relevant to the course, but also the descent into insanity piece, which in of itself is related to the course in the struggles of coming out and the struggles of the closet, and how it can both be a tool to protect yourself as well as something which slowly eats away at you. I hope that this piece was well. I hope you liked it. I'm sorry it got so uncomfortable or too uncomfortable near the end. That was very much on purpose. It was very much supposed to be a bit of a shocking, abrupt piece, which kind of goes along the lines of my own transition, which also kind of made it difficult to not have it escalate until it hits a wall and then it's the crescendo. I plan to do this much more slow burn into insanity, but that didn't really work because my own experience with gender dysphoria is it came very quick and very fast, and I hit that wall very, very quickly. And so in a way, this is kind of like my own my own retelling of my coming to terms with transness, which is, was the month before I was an alcoholic and miserable, but I was, all things considered, okay, to a month of just chaos, hatred towards my body, and complete mental collapse, and panic and screaming, and the rejection of flesh, and very, very much like what was supposed to be presented in the piece. And I hope it served well. Now, I believe this will also serve as a bit of a credits section, and also made to offset me having to write that 2-page thing that you wanted for class to explain the project. I think I've done so here very well, but I'll still do a little bit of that, like posting the pictures to make sure that I did in fact make this. I think it'd be hard to fake because I'm on camera with the microphone doing this. But yeah, to credit the people who helped me out, we have Riley behind the camera. Come here. Riley is my friend. They do acting and theater and has decided to help me with my work. There's also Cassie over there, who has been much emotional support. Come here, honey. Get in front of the camera. Come here. My girlfriend Cassie, who has been very much big emotional support throughout this whole endeavor. And there is also Esme, who appears as an actor, retelling some of her own stories of trans experience to the camera. And so that was her. She's not in the room. She had to leave to a doctor's appointment. And then Alicia, who's also not here because she's busy, although she also was in the work and will be credited in not only the credits of this video, but the credits that are going to be handed out on paper to you, Emmett. Another thing that I found really pressing about this piece is getting the experience of others. Now, I didn't have the time to kind of get as many people as possible. I was possibly going to have a section where my ex-girlfriend talks about her struggles with dysphoria. However, that would have been kind of awkward to do. And another friend who was going to come in and speak about her experience with gender dysphoria and struggles of being trans. However, we didn't have time to grab her, so she was busy all of this week. So we, scrapped that, and we just had the two, which is just Alicia and Esme, which I think is very sufficient and still gets across the whole, going out and getting what a cis person would do, which is go out and get the perspectives of other trans people, and even a trans person would do that as well to kind of broaden the perspective of a video essay. Oh, excuse me. But yes, now I'm not sure if I have much else to talk about here. I think I've explained the scope. I think I've explained the general vibe of this piece, those who are in it. Riley, do you have anything to add? Yay. Wow. So riveting. Yeah. Now, there are some, self-criticism things that I wish to talk about. Well, actually, first we'll go over the sources. This was heavily reliant on Julia Serrano's Whipping Girl, which I did say I would use very heavily. There's also some bits from Sedgwick, which is an in-class reading. As for other sources, I do have a list of them that I kind of picked through, but the majority of the source from this is Julia Serrano's Whipping Girl, which is the 3rd edition of Whipping Girl, specifically that I'm using, so the most recent one, which is a great piece of literature. And I would honestly, to the audience who is not my professors, because I'm sure they've read it, I would highly recommend reading Whipping Girl. It is a great academic, not just academic, but academic and personal look into the struggles of transsexual women that we experience on an everyday basis. And a lot of stuff that didn't really get covered here that I would have loved to talk about. Things like fetishization from chasers, which it gets into what that term means in the book. I'm not going to explain it here. Things about heteronormativity, like I talked about. Things like dysphoria, coming out the closet, things like that. But also talks about how... Did we actually do the scene about lesbian spaces? Well, we can cut that part out. Yeah. It goes into details about, trans women's exclusion from lesbian spaces, how trans women are often excluded, from femininity, how often attacks on trans women are not just attacks on trans women, but are on attacks on womanhood. And this does not just come from, reactionary forces, but comes from people who are quote unquote progressive forces, and how, things like gender abolitionists can sometimes come in and incredibly harm transsexual women without really knowing it, and can kind of take a position that is apparently opposed to them, that's not really opposed to them. And yes, and a lot of this is outlined in this book, and I wished I could have gone into it more, but sadly I didn't get the chance. This is completely improv, if you couldn't tell. I just want to speak freely to the camera to kind of sum up this project, which I hope this is not the longest part of the project, is me talking to the camera like this, but we'll see. But yeah, this is my project, a look into the mind of a transsexual classmate / student / woman on the internet, and her artistic project on the effects of dysphoria, on the effects of the closet, and about coming to terms with one's transness, and the struggles of for my struggles at least, of being transsexual and being in denial of it until 22 years old. It is crazy. I think that's everything. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this gets a good grade, and I hope this gets many views on the YouTube. Thank you, and have a great day. My name is Evelyn Clark, and I am signing off. See you in the next one. Now my professor is, I'm fucking graduating. Great class.